Our top story of the week, all signs, now more than ever, point to CM Punk being back on AEW television very soon, with an announcement coming as early as next month. And it apparently ties into this new Saturday show that Warner Brothers Discovery has greenlit for them, which would give AEW 2 more hours of television, which would give them this new show, probably called Collision, Dynamite, Rampage, Dark Elevation, All Access, plus their quarterly Battle of the Belt specials, their pay-per-views, and 2 hours of Ring of Honor every Thursday. That's a lot of wrestling. And it sounds like Warner Brothers Discovery is all in on AEW. I would be surprised if they don't sign a new deal soon to extend them many more years into the future if they're giving them more programming. Now, Punk is believed to be coming back, but the issues that existed before with him and the members of the AEW locker room have not been resolved at all. It's like you can see the plane taking off from the runway, even though both engines are smoking, and there's nothing you can do but just watch and wait for the crash. Now, per Fightful, Punk is said to have laid out numerous scenarios in which he would return. Among those is a willingness to work with Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. But at least as of a few months ago, the Elite were not keen on doing that, for obvious reasons. I mean, they were publicly slandered by this guy. It was not a work. It was not done as a way to start an angle. And after being told, if you have a problem with me, come find me, they did so, but they brought along the company's head of legal. Now, I don't know about you, but if you were going to supposedly kick down someone's door to harass them or to start a fight, would you bring the head legal counsel for the company that you work for with you? I feel like that's a fact that sometimes gets overlooked in this whole mess. It did lead to a scuffle with Punk allegedly throwing the first punch, Nick Jackson allegedly getting hit in the eye with a chair, and Kenny Omega being bit by Punk's best friend. Everyone got suspended. And so the fact that they might not be too keen on working with this person doesn't sound unreasonable. Maybe they just don't want to have anything to do with him. Maybe they don't trust him, as Punk does not trust them. He called Hangman Page an empty-headed dumb fuck who never did anything in the business. He said this about a former AEW world champion, someone who Bryan Danielson put over in a pretty big way, right? Someone who has had classic matches in this company against the Bucks and against Omega and against Bryan Danielson. And yes, he was wrong to do what he did with that workers' rights promo, which had absolutely nothing to do with the build to their Double or Nothing match. One unprofessional act deserved another, I guess, because Punk sat at home for 3 months and he stewed about it. And the first thing he did when he came back was go on live television to give him a receipt. And that wasn't enough. He had to single him out again at the scrum. It's no wonder that none of these people trust each other. It's not hard to see why. And if there's no trust, that makes for a terrible work environment. Now, I said I understand the Elite not wanting to work with CM Punk. I didn't say anything about them not wanting to meet with him. There needs to at least be a meeting between all the parties involved to see if their differences can be worked out first, before Tony Khan starts booking creative out for the next 6 to 9 months. Punk has been trying to push for such a meeting, but it doesn't sound like there's been any progress made towards making that actually happen. And Tony Khan has to be careful here because Omega and the Bucks right now, as we speak, are both in the middle of contract negotiations. You know, push them too hard and they might want to go test the free agent waters somewhere else. But if they go to WWE, they won't be EVPs. If they enjoy their status as EVPs and having a level of creative input and creative freedom, that is not something they're going to get working for WWE. So they need to weigh the pros and cons of whatever decision it is that they're going to make. There is a meeting planned with Punk and Chris Jericho, which is a must. After Jericho called Punk a cancer after Brawl Out, Punk went on Instagram a few weeks ago, called Jericho a stooge, which was a very stupid thing to do for someone who wants back into the company. Why would you go on social media and call Chris Jericho a stooge, even if it was true? Even if it was true. Why would you do that? I understand that Punk was refuting something that Dave Meltzer said in a message board post when he lashed out the way he did, but there was no need to air out your feelings about Jericho at the bottom of that post. Save it for the eventual meeting. Save it for the face-to-face. But for someone who wants back in, it's like padlocking the door shut and throwing away the key and then banging on the door shouting for somebody to let you in. Doesn't make any sense. By doing that, all he is doing is fanning the flames. Punk is his own worst enemy. But they need to get together in a room and see if they can work together, or at least be cordial to each other and coexist in the same locker room, because even this idea of separate rosters, I mean, think about the absurdity of this. If these reports are to be believed, AEW might be starting a brand new show just to accommodate CM Punk and give him a place to work to keep him apart from Jericho and the Elite and all of their friends. What a stupid idea that would be. I hate the concept of a brand split in general. They basically do one already with Ring of Honor, but I hate how restrictive it is. I like the idea of opening up as many match possibilities as you can with the people that you have. Otherwise, I just feel it places unnecessary handcuffs on you when you're trying to book your shows. If it's more of a soft split, where a handful of talent and stories end up being mostly exclusive to that show, they already have a show like that. It's called Rampage. Or they could always do a WWE Style Split and just ignore the fact that a brand split even exists. But then if they do that, it would defeat the purpose of keeping certain people on the roster away from each other. If you need to create an entirely new show and start a brand split just to avoid conflict between one man and the other members of your roster, that would seem to be a very big problem. What Tony Khan does not need is to divide the roster into factions. That is not healthy, and that is only going to lead to more drama and more conflict. And that might be good for the wrestling news websites, and that might be good for podcasts, but that would be terrible for AEW. Now, Fightful says that Punk has expressed his willingness to return to the company and keep completely separate from the Elite. And there were some talent who were of the belief that this rumored Saturday show could be used to help facilitate that with some separation to the roster. Andrew Zarian of the Mat Men podcast has since reported that the new show will be premiering likely on TNT in June as a 2-hour program from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, with that first show being held in Chicago. Now, if Tony Khan doesn't already have other people helping him on the booking end, and I think he's talked about having people that do give input, and I don't know what the exact creative structure is in that company. The impression I have is that it is still largely on his shoulders. He has people who contribute ideas, probably some of the agents. I don't know if Shivani might have a role in that as well. He already wears a lot of hats in the company, but Tony Khan is still pretty much the end-all be-all when it comes to creative, among all of the other jobs and responsibilities that this guy has. So if he doesn't already have other people who can step in and help him on the booking end, he adds another 2-hour live show on top of what he already has. I don't see how he can handle this all on his own. He's going to burn himself completely out, and the product is going to suffer because of it. Now, AEW has a Dynamite in Chicago at the Wintrust Arena on June 21st that Fightful says could be a date for a Punk return. So even if Punk was to come back and end up on Collision, you would probably bring him back and maybe debut him on Dynamite, right, to get the biggest audience possible, and then you could transition him over to the new show. So the 21st on Dynamite could be a return date for CM Punk. That is possible. Tickets for that show go on sale this week. And the Warner Media upfronts are being held May 17th at the theater at Madison Square Garden, which could be where they announce this new show. In fact, it would seem to me that, unless they make some kind of announcement this week, that would be the place for them to announce this new Collision show. Saturday from 8 to 10 p.m. is a terrible time for a weekly show. That would instantly become their most DVR'd show, even more than Dynamite. Especially on TNT. Given how often it would be preempted for sports. And we're heading into the summer months, no less, where people spend more time outside. This is another reason why a brand split does not work. If you have a show on Wednesdays that is doing, let's just say, on average, Dynamite now doing between 850 and 950,000 live viewers on average, right? Sometimes they touch 1 million, but that's rare. I can't see that Saturday show doing those numbers outside of maybe the first one, which people would watch out of curiosity more than anything else. Even if their calculation is that by making Collision the CM Punk show, that would get them Dynamite level numbers on a Saturday night, I just don't see how that show would sustain those types of numbers every week. You know, if it did, then it would be considered a huge success. But if we assume that it won't, you don't end up with a roster split. You end up with two shows, one of which is a 2-hour Rampage on Saturdays, basically. Because it is not as good of a time slot, especially if they're going to get bounced around a lot. That's exactly what happens with Rampage now on Fridays on TNT. Saturdays would probably be even worse. So how long then before this concept of a brand split gets dropped in favor of mixing the rosters again? It would be up against WWE pay-per-views, UFC pay-per-views, and you could forget about any Saturday AEW pay-per-views, even though most of their shows now are on Sundays. But Full Gear in November, that was on a Saturday. You could forget about that. But if they're going to do it, the star power on the show would have to be equal to Dynamite, and then it would completely negate the need for Rampage. Now, they're not going to go to Warner and say, hey, give us less television. You know, let's get rid of the Friday show. But they should. It's the same thing with WWE. WWE is not going to go to USA and say, look, the show would be better at 2 hours, so we want to just chop off the third hour, right? That's not even their call to make. That's a USA call, and maybe they're getting paid more money for it. I would certainly hope so. I would certainly hope they're making it worth their while, because it has made Raw an inferior show in the last decade compared to how it used to be. But it's the same thing. WWE is not going to go to USA and say, hey, give us less TV, right? I understand that's not how it works. I wish it would be 2 hours, but it is what it is. But that doesn't mean that that is not what they should do. That way they would have 2 hours on Wednesday, and they would have 2 hours on Saturday. Plus you have the YouTube shows. You throw 2 hours of Ring of Honor in there on Thursdays, and that's more than enough. Now, on his podcast last week, Dax Harwood, or FTR Bald, which was trending again the other day, who counts CM Punk among his very best friends, talks to him every day. He spoke about Punk and a possible return to AEW. He said, the reason I am fantasy booking, and he was talking about the Elite against CM Punk and FTR as a potential main event for All In at Wembley Stadium. He says, the reason I'm fantasy booking is because outside of Roman Reigns and maybe Cody Rhodes, the biggest name in professional wrestling right now is CM Punk. Definitely the biggest name in AEW. So if we want to take AEW to the next level, if we are here to work for AEW, if we are here to make professional wrestling better because of AEW, the way you do that is to take the biggest star that you have and one of the biggest stars in the world, and you put them on the card and you make money with them. On top of that, I will say that I talk to Punk almost every day, and Punk misses wrestling. That's your headline. Punk misses wrestling, and Punk wants to come back, and he wants to give back to the fans. He wants to give back to wrestling, so I will leave it at that. Then, we also got a rare statement from FTR Hair, who usually stays out of this stuff. Cash Wheeler took to Twitter yesterday to defend his partner from criticism that he has gotten for being too outspoken about this whole situation. And he said, Dax is one of the best people you could ever meet. Passionate about wrestling and family, protective over his friends, especially when people don't know everything. He is not afraid to speak up and not to do it anonymously. Honest to a fault, we all need to do better to fix this situation. Everyone involved. No fingers pointed. No one is completely innocent. I respect everyone involved, and I want the best for AEW. I am tired of reading negativity from both sides, fans and wrestlers. Real life is more important. Enough. Dax brought up the Wembley Stadium show. All-in tickets don't go on sale to the public until May 5th. But if the pre-sale registrations are any kind of hint, my prediction of them selling at least 50,000 tickets was conservative. PW Insider says they have so far exceeded 50,000 pre-sale registrations. And look, that's just to get the code. Those are just people who signed up to get the pre-sale code. The pre-sale is on May 2nd. Not all of those people will end up buying tickets, right? Maybe half those people will actually buy. Let's say half of those people buy. That would be around 25,000. then you assume maybe half or more of those purchases would be for 2 or more seats. Well, you got 50,000 right there. One thing that it has going for it are the ticket prices. They don't sound unreasonably high. Live Nation has tickets being priced as low as £30 or $37 to as much as £500 or one Yokozuna. That would be a top price of $620. That's for ringside. That's for ringside seating, which sounds really low to me. But that was the choice Tony Khan was going to have to make. Is it more important to make as much money as possible or to fill as many seats as possible to up the attendance and make it look great on TV? It looks like he wants to make the show as affordable as possible to fill that stadium up. And yet, I hear people saying AEW needs CM Punk if they want to sell tickets to Wembley Stadium. This company is on its way to selling 50,000 tickets 4 months in advance without a single match being announced. With or without CM Punk, All In is going to do just fine. Can he help them sell more tickets? Sure. Can he help business in other aspects? Absolutely. CM Punk helped get them their first $1 million gate last year. But to listen to some of these people, you would think that without Punk, they would sell 20,000 at best, and with Punk, they would sell another 50. Wheeler said he wants what's best for AEW. That's what Cash Wheeler said. Well, I'll tell you what, all this social media sniping is not what is best for AEW. Brandon Cutler, quote tweeting a Deadspin editorial about CM Punk gaslighting the company and saying someone gets it, before deleting the tweet and taking his account private. That is not helping AEW. Cutler was suspended for just being in the room when shit went sideways last year, and he's buddies with the Bucks. So he feels the need to comment, but he is not helping when he does stuff like that. Were he not friends with the Bucks, he wouldn't even have a job there. And if he pulls a stunt like that again, then he should be ex-AEW star Brandon Cutler, and I use that term star very loosely. This is exactly the kind of thing that Tony Khan does not need right now. It feels like a civil war is about to erupt in this company. The Punk stuff happened, it died down. We all knew this was going to happen because eventually he was going to recover from the injury and Tony Khan was going to have to make a decision. Do I keep this guy or do I not keep this guy? So things got quiet there for a while until the Instagram shit a few weeks ago blew it all up again, and now here we are. So we knew this was coming. We knew he had a decision to make. But it feels like there's a civil war that's about to blow up behind the scenes in this company. So I say this. It's like Tony bringing Jeff Hardy back. He knows what he is getting into by doing this. It is a risk that he feels is worth taking because Punk can help his business. Punk can help his bottom line. At what cost? That is the question. Take the elite stuff out of it for a second. Punk is coming off back-to-back major injuries. Both times they put their world title on him, he ended up having surgery within days. Can his body even hold up to another run? I would keep him away from that championship. You could do the rematch with MJF at some point. He could challenge for it. But do not put the belt back on him because all you're doing is inviting trouble. Braun Breaker on NXT this week said that I don't want the NXT championship again because it was a curse. It was a curse on me. That AEW title in the hands of CM Punk is a curse. Now, as far as the Elite and Hangman Page and Chris Jericho and Jon Moxley, I mean, Jesus Christ, how many people has this guy pissed off? As far as they go, as far as all those people go, if Tony is bringing back CM Punk, he needs to get them all in a room, and I'm sure he's either about to do this or is trying to make this happen. He's got to get them all in a room to at least have an adult conversation. If the Elite does not want to meet with him, they're EVPs. They are not just talent on the roster who can tell Tony, I don't want to work with this guy. They wanted executive positions in the company, and they got it. Tony did not strip them of those titles when Brawl Out happened, and as EVPs, they have an added responsibility in situations like this to put their own personal feelings aside for the good of the company and make sure that everybody can coexist peacefully, even if they do not want to work with Punk. If they don't want to work a program with him, if they don't trust him, that is their right. CM Punk against Kenny Omega would do big business. They could even have Larry the Dog hanging above the ring in a cage. CM Punk and FTR against the Elite would sell a lot of tickets. They can even let the fans pick sides. Let them choose who the baby faces and who the heels are. But if the president of the company says, I'm bringing back CM Punk, or if Warner Media wants CM Punk back and he says, look, we're making the announcement next month, this is happening whether you like it or not, they need to come to the table now and hear what he has to say. All cards on the table. No lawyers, no legal threats, no dogs. That includes Ace Steel. If Punk wants to bring him to watch his back, put a fucking muzzle on his face and get this shit sorted out for the sake of the company and for the sake of the fans.